Hello, everyone. Welcome to Book Club Preview. Today, we're starting a new book or a new script, a new story, if you will, Romeo and Juliet. Now, this is one of the most famous stories, I think, in history. Almost everyone knows at least the end of Romeo and Juliet. But reading the actual script is a little bit difficult, even for me, a native English speaker, going through that script. Oh my goodness, there's so many expressions and vocabulary word and the way Shakespeare wrote this is incredibly complex, especially trying to translate it into modern English. So we're going to take this story slowly and go through it act by act. And I'm going to focus mostly on the summary, but we'll also have a chance to discuss some vocabulary. So let's jump into it. Before I really jump into the summary, I would like to look at just a short list of characters, especially in this first act. We have the Capulets on one side, and they open the scene. And there's two characters, Samson and Gregory. Gregory is a little immature and a little more on the wild side. And Samson, I believe, sounds a little bit more mature, and he kind of pushes or teases Gregory a little bit. And then we also have Tybalt. Tybalt, I've heard this pronounced several different ways. Thibault, I've heard it. It could maybe be pronounced Tybalt. I don't know, but usually I call him Tybalt. So go ahead and look on that. There's several different movies. There's so many movies on Romeo and Juliet, and you can just experiment and see watching those how they pronounce his name differently. On the other side, whoa, where'd that go? Oh, okay, there we go, Tybalt. On the other side, we have Abraham. He's one of the servants, and he's walking with another servant, and he gets into a fight with Samson and Gregory. We have Benvolio, and Benvolio is a cousin, I believe, of Romeo. And then, of course, we have Romeo. Now, on top of these three characters here, we have the Capulet father, the Capulet mother, the Montague's father, and the Montague's mother, who do make an appearance in this scene. So, to start off with those characters, separating them apart, because it can be a little confusing, we start off with Samson and Gregory, and they're walking through the marketplace, and they're talking, and they're kind of sharing, they're kind of talking like guys do. I'm so cool, I'm so fast, I'm so talented. I hate these other people, and they're just kind of talking together, and Gregory really wants to fight. Okay, he wants to fight a Montague, and Samson's kind of pushing him a little bit, and he's like, man, if you saw Montague, you wouldn't fight, you'd run away. And Gregory's like, I wouldn't run away, I'll kill him, I'll just stab him right now, I'm the best. And he's like, oh really? Well, prove it, because here are some Montagues coming. And then the two Montague servants come, one of them being Abraham. So Abraham's coming along, and Gregory says, oh, I'll prove it. You start a fight with him, and I'll join you. And so Samson's like, man, that's exactly what I thought. But they don't want to start a fight, because if they start the fight, then the law is against them. And so they'll get into trouble, and the Capulets will get into trouble. And so they're trying to let's try to set up ourselves in a way to where the Montagues start the fight. And so Samson's like, kind of, I don't know, he's frowning or looking angrily. And then Gregory's like, oh, that's not enough. I'm going to bite my thumb at them. And he's biting his thumb. Now, in this time and era, that's like the same in America as giving someone the middle finger. That's a really bad expression in America. And so he's just like, biting his thumb at these two guys. And the two guys are walking, and Samson and Gregory, they look really weird, right? Because Gregory's just like saying a bad word to the whole world, and then Samson's just kind of like scowling. He's just kind of angry. And so Abraham And the other guy kind of walking, they stop and they, like, hey, are you biting your thumb at me? Like, and then they start having this conversation. And Gregory's like, well, I'm not biting my thumb at you, but I am biting my thumb. And then Abraham's like, well, okay, so you're angry at the world or saying, a bad word to the world, but it's not at me? And he's like, yeah, it's not at you. But then Gregory wants to battle, right? So if he lets Abraham go, then there's not going to be a fight. And so Abraham starts to walk away and he's like, oh, but I am biting my thumb though. And then Abraham has to stop. It's like, well, hold on, what's going on? And so then they start kind of getting in this conversation to where eventually they start getting into a battle where they kind of start talking like, okay, well, my master's not better than your master and your master's not better than my master. And they're kind of at this level playing field. But then another Montague starts to come and they say, so Abraham, then he ups it and says, no, my master's better than yours. And then the other two, right, Samson and Gregory, they're like, what, you're lying? And they pull out their swords and they start fighting. Now, Benvolio, even though he's a Montague, he doesn't want to fight. So he sees these two servants fighting. And Benvolio tries to separate them. He's like, guys, stop it, come on, stop. Eventually, he tries to take out his sword, to maybe hit the other swords to get the two people to stop fighting. But they're not stopping. They're making some noise. And then Tybalt, he sees what's going on here. And Tybalt is really hot-blooded. He wants to fight. He wants to kill someone. Well, not someone. He wants to kill Montagues because he hates them. And so he sees, he's like, oh yeah, fight. And Benvolio's in here, so he takes out his sword and he's like, turn around, Benvolio. I'm going to kill you. And Benvolio's like, hey, stop it. I'm just trying to stop this fight. Help me. Or, go away. But Tybalt's not having it. He starts to kind of thrust his sword around Benvolio's body. And so Benvolio actually has to turn around and start fighting Tybalt because Tybalt won't leave him alone. And so this fighting starts to erupt. And people keep joining it from each side and until it's like this huge battle and the marketplace is knocked over, food's going everywhere, and it's not a good scene. Finally, the prince starts to come into the marketplace. Now when the horns get blasted, everyone stops and they all kind of go side to side and they're bowing, and the prince comes and the prince is angry. And he says, oh, you know what? I forgot. The Capulet father comes out and he's fighting. The Montague father comes out and they're fighting. And they're like old people. So they're like fighting each other with like sticks. Well, they're not really. They have their swords. But they're old and they're like... Rrr. So the prince says, hey, this is the third time you guys have started a fight in my streets. If you start another fight in my streets, either of you will die. Okay, that's just it. Like, if you start a fight, you'll pay for that fight with your lives, and you will be executed. Wow. And so then the prince goes away. The Capulet goes with him because they have to continue the conversation and go see the king. Montague is going to go visit them later. So everyone kind of breaks up and goes to their own places. Montague, the mother, Romeo's mother, is like, oh, I haven't seen Romeo. Have you seen him? Oh, thank goodness he wasn't in this fight. And Benvolio says, oh, I didn't see him, but I did see him early this morning. He was walking into the woods. He looked sad. I tried to follow him, but he was avoiding me, so I just left. And then they're talking like, oh, it seems like Romeo's really sad, but we don't know what's going on. We wish we knew, but he won't tell anyone. And then they see Romeo coming, and Benvolio's like, oh, I see him. Hey, look, uncle, auntie, I'm going to find out what the reason is, and I'm going to let you know, okay? I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to take care of Romeo for you guys. Don't worry. And like, oh, thank you so much, Benvolio, and they go inside. Romeo comes up, and Romeo's like, "Oh, hey, was that my mom and dad?" And Benvolio's like, "Yeah, it was, but hey, man, what's going on? Why are you so sad?" Romeo doesn't want to tell him, so he's kind of like avoiding the topic. And then Benvolio kind of finds out that Romeo is in love, or at least not that he's in love, but the person he loves doesn't love him back. And we find out that Romeo's in love with this really beautiful girl, but she has decided to never marry anyone. So she's going to be like a nun or something, and she's just going to be single for her whole life. And so she won't give Romeo a chance to woo her, to marry her, to romance her. And Romeo is just heartbroken because everything he sees just reminds him of this girl. And Benvolio's like, "Hey, oh man, I'm really sad that you feel so sad, but I know the cure." And Romeo's like, "That's impossible. There's no cure for this. I'm going to be lonely and depressed for the rest of my life because I can't be with this woman." And Benvolio says, "No, there is a cure. Just go look at other women." And Romeo's like, "No, I couldn't do that. That's impossible. She's the only one for me. Those girls will just remind me of how beautiful this original girl is." And Benvolio, he kind of considers this a test, and so he's like, "You know what? I'm gonna take that challenge, and I'm gonna find someone. I'm gonna do something to help you cure your heartache." And that is how Act 1 from Scene 1 ends. Whew. Now, jumping into the vocabulary, because this is all written in Old English, there's so many different expressions, there's so many different vocabulary words, unique words used in this whole scene. I could almost go line by line and explain the different things. So I'm going to try to do something different. And I'm going to give you a challenge. Okay? Out of this whole scene, or not this whole scene, this whole act, I would like you to pick 2 expressions or words that you didn't know, you didn't understand, and you had to look them up. Because if you're not looking up these words, you're not going to understand anything. So I'm going to assume that as you're reading, you're going to be searching these expressions and these words, okay? So when you find one, I want you to write your own definition in the YouTube comment, okay? So pick a word. For example, I had bite my thumb. Okay, that's not common English. In fact, that's what we say babies do. Babies are biting their thumbs. We would think you're talking about a baby. So I would pick this expression, bite one's thumb at someone. Then in my own words, I would define it. Okay, I'm not using a dictionary. I'm not copying it from someone else's definition on the internet. I'm using my own words. And I would say, biting your thumb at someone means giving that person the middle finger, using the F word, beep, in English at someone. Okay, I would define that. Then I would pick another one and I'd also define it. Okay, I'm going to put those in the YouTube comments so that way other students can see my explanation of that word. Now, I'm going to challenge you and say if someone had already picked a word that you wanted to pick, if they posted it first, you can't pick that word. If you have a different definition, then I would say you could pick it and then you could challenge and we can talk about the differences in your definitions. But first come, first serve. So if you pick the word first and you write the comment first, you get that word. But if someone already did it, then you need to find a new one. And sorry, just go back to your script and try to find a new expression. And please write those in the comments. Usually we'll practice writing sentences with new vocabulary, but in this case, we're just going to define vocabulary. And then we're all going to share those words together. So just define 2 vocabulary words. You don't need to write sentences. Of course you can if you want to see if you're using the expression correctly, and I'll check those sentences for you. But as our general like bonus extra study homework goes, just define 2 expressions or vocabulary words. One other thing I want to throw out here, it's not really vocabulary. I just kind of fell upon this really interesting website, Romeo and Juliet 27. I'm going to add a link into the description for you. And that has a really nice character outline. So it has Montagues, Capulets, and how they're connected and the relationships. It goes into the characters a little bit and gives you some understanding of each of these characters. And it talks about the story and all sorts of stuff. It's just this fan-made website. It's not professional or anything. But I thought it was really interesting, and I thought it was even a little helpful. So I'm going to throw that link in there so you can look at the different family trees and maybe find other information if you want. That's it for vocabulary. So my last activity here is the discussion question, of course, as always, because we want to talk about what's going on in the script. And so my question to you is, have you ever hated someone? Now, certainly this feud between the Montagues and the Capulets, there's some pretty deep hate where they just want to actually kill each other. And that's not like killing each other with a gun, but like taking a sword and oh man, that's a lot of hatred to be able to do that to someone. We probably haven't had that experience or that level of hate, but have you ever hated someone? I guess the most. What is the most you've ever hated someone? Even if it was just a little hate, maybe that was the most. And we want to hear your story. What was that like? Who was it? What did they do? And why did you hate them for that? And of course, I'm also going to share my own story. Don't forget to write your own discussion question, okay? Even though this is a really short act, okay, usually we're reading a whole chapter, we're reading 2 chapters, we're having all this plot to discuss. It's a little simpler here. There's a lot of things we can discuss going on in this chapter. I just thought of like 2 or 3 different discussion questions while I'm talking to you right now. So please take the time to think of a discussion question. Well, that is all the time that we have for today. But thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Book Club Preview. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Hey, if you have any questions about the video today, please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section. If you had any other vocabulary words that you wanted to know what they meant, let me know. And also, if you're interested in maybe joining one of these book clubs, please leave a comment and I'll get back to you. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.